Hey, we are back with more of Coach's Corner with Heck and King live at the Linebacker in South Bend, right by Notre Dame's campus. And we are pleased to welcome on South Bend Adams grad and the voice of the Marquette Golden Eagles, home of my favorite player ever, Tyler Kolek, Mr. Steve True. Oh, he went black.
No, Steve.
There he is.
There he is.
Hey, Steve, how you doing?
I can't see you, but I'm doing fine. I don't know. Can you see me?
Absolutely. That's fine. You don't need to see us three. That's for sure.
Yeah, I saw you.
You may need to see me, but not these other two.
I don't know Pat. I don't know a Pat True. There are a lot of Trues, but not a Pat.
Really? Really? What year did you graduate from John Adams?
I graduated from John Adams in 1972, 2 years before my brother Greg, who was significantly smarter. I believe you can check with Greg, but I don't know that he ever took a book home in high school.
And you know what? And you know what, Steve? He still doesn't. When we teach next to each other, he still doesn't take a book home.
Yeah. And I thought I was a pretty good student, and he got a copy of my advanced geometry notebook and told me one day, I thought you were smart. I was not as smart as he was. So, and in fact, you should know this. There were 8 of us, and 2 of the 8 were very smart. My older brother, Mike, who was 4 years older than I was, had a PhD in astrophysics at Princeton.
Wow.
And after a couple of years, my parents sent him to then Stanley Clark, that had just started, because they thought he was smart enough to go there to be challenged, and they were right. Then my sister Mary came along. They didn't view her smart enough to go to Stanley Clark for long. And they never gave a second of thought for me. Greg shows up and they go, yeah, he better go to Stanley Clark. So
there you go, man.
Stanley. Well, let me ask you this real quick. This is Pat King, by the way.
Yes.
I've got a question for you. Who was your dentist back in the old days? You remember anybody named Dr. Hecklinski over on the west side?
No, we did not have. There was another guy, Dr. Toothaker, as well. Yeah. We had a doctor, I think it was Rose. He was a horrible dentist.
I'm glad to hear that.
Only because
that's why my dad had a lot of business on the west side.
Okay. Well, no, I just want to help people out, and I've done this with our kids. You need to know if you have good teeth or bad teeth. We had horrible teeth, and the dentist never told us, because he should have said, look, your teeth are a mess. They're going to be a problem your whole life. You better take care of your teeth, because even if you do, they're still going to be a mess. I didn't, and so I have cavities on cavities. I got you have a crown and you think you're done. No, then the crown gets old. Then you have a crown. So anyway, parents out there, make sure you advise your kids. Now, other kids have these just rocket teeth, and you want them to take care of their teeth, but it's not a big deal. So I don't know, probably more than you wanted to know about teeth, but it's the only mistake my parents made. They didn't tell us how bad our teeth were.
Well, I went to school with his youngest sister, Lisa. We both graduated in 1982. Lisa was a great tennis player at John Adams High School. But, Steve, I want to ask you.
What was her last name?
True.
Oh, Lisa True? Yeah, that's my sister.
That's your youngest sibling. Come on.
Yes. So
is he still broadcasting games?
Yeah, it's kind of what he needs. Some magic mind, I think, is what he needs.
God, they're busted him.
Hold on. You didn't say Lisa True. So I'm teaching tennis at the Racket Club in South Bend. And she was one of my students. She's 10 years younger than I am. And people say, what's it like?
Is she better looking than you?
What?
Is she better looking than you?
Yes.
Okay, good.
They all are.
Good. Just kidding. You're good.
No, what do you mean it's kidding? You know my greatest high school story? You ever hear of the Ahlers?
Yes. Okay. Yes.
So Tom Ahlers was 2 years older than me. And I didn't know his dad was this legendary athlete that was close personal friends with Johnny Wooden his whole life. Otherwise, I would have made fun of Ahlers because he was a phenomenal athlete. So he sees me. This is my most memorable moment in high school at Adams. I'm sitting at the library or somewhere. It was Friday, and you wore your letter sweater. And I had gotten it in tennis as a sophomore, and I weighed about 110 pounds. And he walks by and he goes, how the hell did you get a letter? And I go, tennis. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to make more money playing tennis than you will playing football, which of course was a lie, but I sold it as good as I could. He goes, I had an older sister, Mary, 2 years older. Gorgeous. He says, "Aren't you Mary True's brother then?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "What happened to you?" I said,
Hey,
"Oh, what, you
so-
think you're the first person to notice how pretty she is?"
so now when anybody says that to him, you know what you can say? I'm the voice. I'm the voice of the Marquette Screaming Eagles.
It
man.
doesn't help. They're actually the Golden Eagles. They were
Golden
the
Eagles.
They were the Warriors. And let me
Yes.
give you a little tip. And I did not know this till recently. I believe the Golden Eagle is the toughest thing on the planet Earth. No one can whoop a Golden Eagle. You can't kill a Golden Eagle, and it is so powerful, it will take down an elephant if necessary when it wants to eat. And you have YouTube pictures all over the place of a Golden Eagle taking on a goat and just wiping out the goat. Goat goes down. No one, nothing can take down a Golden Eagle.
Is that what Al McGuire told you? Did he tell you that story?
No. But when Al McGuire was the coach,
They were warriors back
they were
then.
warriors. He knew nothing. No, he did not know Golden Eagles. And I've been doing this since '89, and when I started, Al was doing the TV. And one of the great joys was to get to meet Al McGuire, and for whatever reason, he was nice to me. I don't know why. I was invited to his private country club gathering when he died. I'm sitting at a table with Maurice Lucas, Jim Jones, Bo Ellis,
man, those are
Earl
names.
Tatum, some of his greatest players. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know why I was there. So I went over to see his wife, Pat. And I said, "Pat, I don't know if you know who I am." She goes, "Yeah, you're home. I know you are." I said, I'm honored to be here, but I really have no idea how I got selected." She turns to me and she says, "He always liked you, and I never understood why." Yeah,
Wow.
that's exactly how I feel. So,
wow.
Yeah, he was.
But you forgot. Yeah, but you forgot one name.
What?
Okay, you forgot Dean the Dream Meminger.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Hold on. Dean was not there. Dean had some issues. We don't need to go there, but yes, Dean the Dream.
That's a whole nother story.
Dean
One of
the
the
Dream
greatest.
Meminger.
Yeah, he was. Well, and the games I started doing were with George Thompson, who was legendary as a high school player in New York City. Maybe the greatest high school basketball team ever, Erasmus, when he played. The high school was like 12,000 students. But anyway, and Dean Meminger came, and old people Dean Meminger may have been as good a college point guard as any that ever played as a college point guard.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with that.
Yeah,
but you got to be old.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to ask you here, Steve, is how did you get into broadcasting? How did you kind of get into this career? All of us broadcasters, we have great stories. I want to hear your story of how you got into broadcasting.
I prefer not to do it because it ends up with someone going like, "Are you okay?" So I was a college tennis player, and then I wanted to be a college tennis coach. My younger brother, Jeff, 2 years younger than Greg, was all Big Ten at Indiana. And I'd been the assistant coach at Notre Dame. When he graduated, I thought, be the next coach at Indiana. There were two of us that they interviewed. I had a number of kids that were national players who'd done very well. And so I went in there for the interview with one other guy at Indiana and didn't get the job. And so I decided, given that I had a college degree in accounting, that I would go into radio instead.
That's a natural fit, man.
Yes. Well, and so in South Bend, you would know the famous accounting firm is Crow Chiswick, I think. Then, so anyway, Mr. Crow was a friend of my dad, and they heard that I couldn't coach anymore, but I didn't get a job because I'd had an arthritic problem. So I decided I was going to go into broadcasting. And so Fred Crow comes in and he goes, "Look, I'll hire you today. This is 1980. I'll pay you $50,000. You make $50,000. I saw your yes." And I go, "Well, but I don't really want to be an accountant." He said, "Well, don't you have a college degree in accounting?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Okay. So what are you going to do?" "I think I'm going to go to broadcasting school in Chicago." "Have you ever done radio before?" "No." He goes, "Look, when you get your head squared away, call me anytime and I'll hire you in the firm and you got a job. Because I have no idea what the hell's going through your head right now." And then he got up and left. And I started in New Richmond, Wisconsin, in February of 1980, and I've been doing it ever since.
Okay, so did you end up going to broadcasting school?
Yes, I went to Midwestern Broadcasting School. The most famous member there is ever was the guy who did Soul Train. What was his name? Don Cornelius.
Yes.
He is a grad. He's a graduate.
Yeah, Don Cornelius.
Yes,
Boy.
who's on Wabash. And I only went there. I actually went to another broadcasting school for a couple of weeks, but the teacher at Midwestern then was a guy by the name of Jim Chanel, a legendary rock and roll by the name of Captain Whammo. You can look him up. He was the first guy to ever dominate on an FM station in Chicago when WLS was huge. Anyway, he was teaching, and I just thought, this guy's really. And so I went with him at broadcasting school, and then sent some tapes out to New Richmond, Wisconsin, and the rest is not history, but it doesn't make any sense now, and that's why I don't often tell the story. I was like, what were you thinking? I have no defense for anything. I wasn't doing drugs. I don't really.
No, you weren't doing any shrooms back in those days?
No.
No shrooms? And you made that decision straight?
Yes, I can't. Hey. I know.
Hey.
You'd say we can end this interview. God knows what he's going to come up with next, but it's worked out okay. My father, to be fair, was a professional speaker, so maybe I thought I would kind of be like my dad, but he was famous and I'm not, so I failed there too. But.
I want to ask you about Marquette a little bit. How are the Golden Eagles doing this year as we're getting here ready for Selection Sunday in just a little while?
They're good. They were very strong at the beginning of the year. It's been kind of a struggle. Not that they're bad, but the question isn't are they good? It's how good are they? The story in the Big East has been Pitino at St. John's. To no one's surprise, since Marquette's played against Pitino when he was at Louisville. One of the greatest wins ever for Marquette. Was when they beat Kentucky when he was coaching there to make the Sweet 16 in like 94. So have done so many games against Pitino. But what he's done at St. John's is unbelievable because they just defend. And it's like they got 7 guys on the floor. But again, Marquette's fine. And the key is, the goal is to probably, for me, it's always to get to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. And they certainly have a chance. But they haven't played as well lately as they did early in the year when they beat a number of very good teams.
Yeah, they were really good early. I know they're tied right now with Creighton, and I think in second place. And
right,
they have 2 left. They can't catch St. John's. I think St. John's.
No, and the 2 left is Wednesday. It's at UConn, and then the season ends at home against St. John's.
Oh,
Creighton plays Seton Hall and somebody else. It'll be a surprise if they're still tied with Creighton.
So just plan on being the 3 seed when you get to the
Seton Hall and Butler.
Yeah, Seton Hall and Butler. The 4 of us and one other person could beat Seton Hall. It's really kind of sad.
So Steve, who's your color analyst?
My color analyst now is Tony Smith, who was the first year I did Marquette basketball. He was the star then, played in the NBA as a rookie in Game 5 for the Lakers against the Chicago Bulls. I don't know who was hurt, and they said, "Hey, Tony, go guard Michael Jordan." So he shut him down in Game 5, held him to about 30. Was a spectacular player at Marquette. Before that, I had Jim McIlvain, a 7-footer, played in the NBA.
Sure.
Again, my first guy was George Thompson, who, as Shaka Smart said a couple of years ago at the banquet, he was the original Dwayne Wade. So
yeah, that's right, Dwayne Wade. So did you ever work closely with the late great Rick Majerus?
Yes,
at Marquette.
Yes. As a matter of fact, we did a show after he had finished coaching basketball and life, not necessarily in that order. He was just a fascinating man. I don't know how much I want to get into his funeral because it was the weirdest funeral I ever went to in my life. But he was a part of Marquette for, the whole time. And I went out to eat with him once. The greatest eater I've ever been around in my life. He invites me to go eat to this Italian restaurant, and we sit down. It's just he and I. And the waiter comes over, waitress, and he pulls the menu out and appetizers. He goes, "I'll take one of these. He picked 5 appetizers. And I said, "Rick, is somebody else coming?" "Nope." We got done eating. I said, "I can't eat with you." It's just, and the only other time I went with him was to watch a basketball game with a friend of his, Rich Piniella, who was a very successful coach. He gets done eating, and he says, "You know what I need? I need some custard. Isn't there a Cops a couple blocks away?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm not going." He goes to the waitress. "Here's $50. Go get us some custard at Cops." She goes, I can't leave. I'm working. He puts out another 50, said, "Here's $100." She says, "I'll go now." So he orders custard that they bring to
They brought it to him.
Yes.
That's
No,
a-
I don't. He had to have the greatest genes. He should have been dead at 30. No one ate like he did. To this day, I've still never seen anything like it.
Yeah, and he
Everybody has a price.
so when
Great coach.
when he left Ball State,
Yes.
his assistant Dick Hunsaker got the job,
Yep.
and Dick Hunsaker hired me at Ball State. And,
Really?
And I had to take Rick Majerus's car and turn it back in. And
There was food stuff all over the car.
no,
right?
no. There were Cheetos marks on the roof
Yes.
inside. There was pizza everywhere, and he had broke the front seat of a Park Avenue, and it was propped up in the back with a Louisville Slugger. And I had to drive this thing in and say, "Hey, here's Rick's car," and they looked at it and said, "What?"
What did he do to it?
And Rick Majerus was great.
You couldn't tell me a story. He's legendary because I think at the time, and he gives a lot of credit. So he'd been at Marquette, and then he coached 1 year with the Bucks, and then started with Ball State. But anyway, I think it was at Utah. Travis Diener, one of Marquette's great players, played in the NBA. So he's from Fond du Lac, not too far from here. So Rick's recruiting him and wants to try to get him to come to Utah, and they know that Rick Majerus eats. So Travis's grandmother makes an apple pie. And so they do the interview, and the next thing you know, like 30 minutes later, they get a call from Rick Majerus. He says, "Can I come back?" And they go, "Why?" He goes, "I stopped on the side of the road. That pie is so good. I ate it. I want another pie from your grandma."
No, and so one of the legendary things that he did, he would watch film on a stair stepper,
Yep.
and we would always ask him, "Why do you do that?" He said, "I love to eat, and I have to burn some calories, and so if I'm going to watch film, I'm gonna work out." And he was religious for doing that.
No, you couldn't tell a story of anything about food that I wouldn't believe.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So then one of my high school guys that I graduated with was Billy Scholl, and obviously Billy Scholl being the great AD at Marquette, huh?
Yes. So, yes, and I think he was a year. I think he went to St. Joe's, and he might have been a wrestler. But anyway, when he first took over as AD, they give you stuff to read, and I'm not reading all that stuff. So, because people at Marquette hate Notre Dame, they just hate Notre Dame. You'd have to ask them. It's just my father.
Yeah, and they hire a Notre Dame guy then, right?
Right. And so, and I grew up in South Bend, so I was the assistant tennis coach, and I knew enough. Eric Parsegian lived a few blocks away from us. He used to come to the high school games. His son Mike played. But anyway, so they hire Bill Scholl, and I'm around him a couple times, and I go, "Wow." So when I had to introduce him, I said, "This is Bill Scholl," and I'm telling you, he went to Notre Dame. He's the nicest person I've ever met from Notre Dame, and my dad taught there. Bill Scholl.
That's a great line.
And no, he's since left. I think he's living in South Bend. I saw him.
He's back.
And the greatest connection is that his wife and I are a graduate of the same college. Of course, you know what that college is.
Yes.
Indiana University at South Bend, the great school. And when I went there, it was Riverside High, but I don't know. So there was a connection there. I will ask you, because I believe this is the hardest trivia question ever, and I'm from South Bend, didn't know the answer. The famous coach Homer Drew, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I believe he's the one who got Digger Phelps fired. He beat him when he was at Valpo, both in South Bend and in Valpo, but I'm not sure I'm right. All right, Homer Drew coached at two colleges in South Bend. Neither is Notre Dame?
I think I know the answer to that.
Well, go
I do
ahead.
too.
One's Bethel.
And the
Yeah,
other
it's
one's
Bethel and
IUSB.
IUSB.
Right.
And
And-
IUSB.
Okay, this is why I didn't know Bethel existed. I worked at the Racket Club, which is about 6 blocks away. And they said, Homer Drew coached. I said, no, he didn't. There's no school there. So it's a fenced-in area that's about, I don't know, what is it, 3 blocks? It's got like one building. So,
It's huge now. It's
Yeah.
great.
well,
now.
huge now. It wasn't then. And
Yes.
I had never heard of him. So I get to introduce him at the Milwaukee Classic. He comes to play when he's at Valpo. And I said, this is really an honor because I believe I'm the only person to graduate from a college and did not know the nickname of the school. I did not know that IUSB, that I didn't know the nickname. I don't know if they even had sports teams back then. Anyway, so I said, I bought a book about Homer Drew just so I could find out what a nickname. And one chapter is about the 1 year he coached at IUSB. I don't think at the time they even had a gym. I think he played at high school gyms. And I found out I was a Titan. So I tell this story, and he comes up and goes, I'd like to thank Homer for the 6th purchase of that book. But, so, I mean, you knew that there was a Bible school there, Bethel? I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, so it's much bigger now?
They had a great basketball summer
Which
camp.
one of his sons? So at the time, I'm one of the time I was the head tennis pro at the Racket Club, which Eric Parsegian had owned originally. Anyway, I'm working there, and they tell me the story that Homer Drew was the tennis coach at Bethel too, and he went to the Racket Club and said, "Would you give us some free courts to play?" And they go, "No, we're not going to do that." So he then said, "Okay, and we'll pay for that, but will you give my kid a job to do maintenance?" Which one of his sons is the coach at Baylor?
Scott.
So Scott apparently is doing maintenance at the Rocket Club while I'm the head pro. Yeah.
Oh, my.
Who's done better sets? What do you think?
Got to ask you about your
Well,
beloved.
it's you, Steve. You got to cover Tyler Kolick.
Yes,
Yeah,
that was
exactly.
My favorite player
that
ever.
was a treat.
I want to
Tyler
flip it here.
Kolick was special.
I want to flip it to football here real quick. I want you to talk about your beloved Green Bay Packers. I hear you're a big cheesehead.
I mean, I've been in Milwaukee. I've been in Wisconsin. So I started in '80. I've been in Wisconsin every year, but a couple of years that I was in Alliance, Nebraska, which is not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And so, yeah, it's been a great run with the Packers because of Brett Favre. I did a TV show with him for a while. And then I got to know Aaron Rodgers a little bit before he went crazy. But yeah, I mean, the Packers dominate, and so any show you do, the attention always goes to the Packers. The year the Bucs won the title with Giannis was the year that Aaron Rodgers had some issue with his contract. The ratings for the show were higher when talking about Aaron Rodgers and his contract than the Bucs winning the world championship.
Wow.
All years.
Wow.
So yeah, we always talk about the Packers.
Yeah, well, you're talking to a Bears guy here, and of course, you know John
I'm a
is a
Lions
Detroit
guy.
Lions guy, and so just let me ask you this question: does the name Cairo Santos ring a bell with you? Last game of the season this year, right? Nails a 51-yard field goal, beats the Packers.
Hey, wait a minute. Do you realize how pathetic it is that that's the best you got? I mean, think of that.
No,
You know, that's like saying you were the last one to die on the Titanic.
no,
Yeah,
no.
right.
I think my best one is when Charles Martin slams Jim McMahon shoulder first into the turf. Right?
Yeah, that was pathetic. So no, I was there covering the team back then when Forrest Gregg, and it is, I believe, that players that have said that when they played one time, I think it was in Milwaukee, that that Forrest Gregg and Mike Ditka literally wanted to fight. They just wanted to fight each other because I'm sure Ditka, as a player, hated the Packers because they kicked his butt every year. So I'm growing up in South Bend. My dad had no interest in sports. They had tickets to Notre Dame. My mom claims she never saw the opening kickoff ever because it was easier to park when you got there late. Anyway, so my friends are so I'm like 10 years old, 62, maybe 8, and they're fans of the Bears. And I'm like, why are you fans of the Bears? And they go, well, Chicago's up here. I go, the Packers kick their butt every game. I'm going to root for the Packers. I thought, why would you root for a team that loses? I'm going to root for the team that wins. So
So
like
that's
the
the story.
Yankees.
You were a Packer fan.
Yes.
Before you
I
had to.
remember in my room where I was on the ice bowl. Okay, it's the last play. I was so nervous I could not look at the TV screen, and all I heard was star touchdown. Yes.
It's all you needed to hear, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
Yep.
I agree. That sounds good. Hey, so give us a little rundown. Who have been the basketball coaches at Marquette that you've dealt with? You've been there, since, what'd you say, 87, 88?
So since 89, I fortunately avoided Bob Duquette, who was horrific. And then when my first year was Kevin O'Neill took over, total craziest man in the history of the world, but a very good coach, did a nice job. Then Mike Dean took over. After that, it was Tom Crean, who, of course, provided Dwayne Wade. He's the greatest coach in the history of basketball. And that will be true of anybody who brings in Dwayne Wade. And then after that, it was, I'm trying to think, Wojciechowski, who came from Duke.
Wojo.
Yeah.
Wojo had no idea what he was doing, but he was a very good recruiter. The players that Marquette has won with the last couple of years under Shaka are players he recruited.
Is that right?
Yeah, did a nice job, but I never thought.
Like Tyler
I
Kolek.
blame Coach K. I don't think he ever helped him coach. He was I don't know, I never felt he had any idea exactly what they wanted to do. But yes, everything matters regarding Dwayne Wade. So Dwayne Wade he sat out the first year for grades, and then he plays like 4 or 5 games, and Crean calls me into the office. And Tom Crean was not the easiest person to get along with, as people at Indiana discovered pretty quickly. And they tell me, Homer, you got to go in. By the way, I'm the only college play-by-play announcer ever who's never used his name. I have only one name doing basketball, Homer.
Homer.
They don't even know my name. I did a game against Notre Dame in which LaFonso Ellis is doing the games for Notre Dame. And he had known me because we'd done games. And I said to him, he said, Homer, how you doing? And I said, you won't believe this, but my dad had you as a student at Notre Dame. He goes, really? Because he had no idea what my name was. He goes, who's your dad? I go, Dr. Herb True. He goes, your dad is not Dr. Herb True. I said, excuse me? He said, if your dad was Dr. True, my favorite professor ever at Notre Dame, I would have known it. I said, how the heck would you know it? No, you never asked my name. My name was just Homer. He says, I'm just telling you, I don't believe that's your dad. And I don't know why you would make that up. I mean, LaFonso Ellis is one of the great people, if people don't know him. And anyway, I said, oh, so you're just never going to believe me? He said, no. I get on my phone and say, Dad, this guy wants to talk to you. So he talked to LaFonso Ellis. And I think LaFonso now believes that he's my dad.
The phone.
But
pretty
so
cool.
Tom Crean calls me in, and I tell my wife, I'm going to get fired. Whenever Tom Crean called you in, whoever you were, he just figured he's going to fire you because he's mad at me. He says, you got to cut this out. I go, what? He goes, you got to stop doing this. He's walking back and forth. Look, he's yelling, Homer, cut it out. You just can't do this anymore. I said, what are you talking about? He says, I told you can't do it anymore. I'm going, what? He said, Dwayne Wade has enough pressure, and everybody tells me that all you ever do is talk about how Dwayne Wade, how good he is. I said, yeah, I tell everybody they got to go to every game because he's the most entertaining player I've ever seen. He said, well, you got to stop. And I said, well, I'm not going to stop. He goes, what? He goes, he's the best college player I've ever seen, and it isn't even close. And this was after like 7 or 8 games. And he says, okay, I got to go. I didn't get fired, and I guess I don't know if I said what he wanted or not, but there's no way to describe. It's the greatest moment I've ever had at Marquette. So George Thompson, and again, you have to be old to know this. He was one of the greatest high school players in the history of the city of New York. And George Thompson held the scoring record at Marquette for, 40 years. And I know George never thought there'd be a player better than him. It didn't matter how many. So Marquette beats Kentucky to get to the Final Four. And Dwayne Wade comes over, and he's talking, and George stops and says, Dwayne, you're the greatest player to ever play at Marquette, not only for what you've done, but for what you will do. And he turns to me and claims it's the only time I ever shut up. I couldn't talk. I couldn't say, people have no idea the historic greatness of this. So he just passed the torch, and it's a torch he never thought. So he said, Homer, are you okay? Like, yeah, and then I went on, and I can remember it like it was yesterday. That's how good Dwayne Wade was. I told the Bucks to take him, and they said the guy just didn't think he could shoot that well. I'm going, But I did not think that he would be picked as early as he was and I give Pat Riley all the credit because there's nothing he did in the pros that surprised me at all.
Yeah, well, Michael Jordan went third. Okay, so that's how that works out sometimes, man. Hey,
well,
listen,
and that draft was the LeBron draft. LeBron,
Correct,
Carmelo, Chris
And then the
Bosh,
stupidest
Dwayne Wade,
yes,
Darko
number two.
Milicic.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, and then they ended up playing together. So, John, why don't you wrap this up?
Hey, Steve, we really appreciate you taking the time. Great stories. We want to wish you the continued success as a fellow play-by-play guy.
I wish I could talk more about my brother. You left out. Do you know how famous Greg True is?
He told me not to ask that question.
Well,
today.
I'm going to tell it because
okay, you go ahead.
No. How great do you have to be to hold a record that will never be broken? He did it in about 1968, maybe. Never broken since, and will never be broken again, ever. Do you know any athlete that can say that? Only Greg True. East Side Little League. 6 innings. He strikes out all 18 hitters. All 18 outs were strikeout. Can't be beaten. Will never be beaten because you can't pitch more than 6 innings.
That's amazing.
But the best part is, Greg is just so nice, and he could have been a great golfer, but I don't know if he didn't like to compete. I don't know. We don't know each other that well. It's the way we were in our family. But he would always get irritated. I mean, he was on my team when I was 12 and he was 10, and he would get mad. So in the second inning, they hit a ground ball to second, and the kid makes an error. And Greg turns over and yells at him or something because I'm at the game for some. And I'm thinking, oh, come on. Well, if the kid hadn't made an error, he couldn't have struck out all 18. Whoever that kid is. To this day, he owes it because Greg True owns a record and he's had it for what? How many years is that? 60 years and will never, ever be broken. And I remember we sent it in. The great Bob Lutz. Any of you people remember Bob Lutz? He was a sports guy on CBS. Are you old enough?
Yep.
And he announced Greg True at 18. And Bob Lutz also said, I hate to finish with this. There's a sad day in baseball today. Robert Clement passed away. That was the day I realized maybe Bob Lutz wasn't as smart as sports guy. But yes, Greg True. Doesn't matter what my brother did, all Big Ten, nothing. He holds a record that still stands today and will stand forever. All 18 outs, strikeouts.
What a great story, Steve. Hey, we appreciate your time tonight, all the great stories, all the great memories. We really appreciate you. Best of luck to Marquette and to you guys coming up in the Big East tournament as well as the NCAA tournament. And I know your calls are going to be legendary. Thank you for taking time, my friend.
Happy to do it.
Steve.
Bye.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Steve.